Hey guys, it's Naz Islam from nazislam.com, and this video is the continuation of the previous video where I created this index.html where I added these different HTML elements and I rendered this HTML in this web page. Here you can see that we have this like different elements such as like header, paragraph tag, list, an image tag, a link, a small link here which goes to the google.com website. So what I will be doing in this video is to show you how you can create tables in HTML, as well as another cool feature in HTML where there are some elements that are like works or like act like block element, and some other elements which act like inline elements. So we'll be going over these in this video. But before jumping into that, what I wanted to do is that since this is the file that we created in the last video, and so that like you can play with this file and have access to this. So I will be uploading this on a GitHub repository, um, and I will push these changes there so that like you can clone this file from that GitHub repository. So there are multiple ways you can do this. You can use like command lines, the git commands there, as well as there are like simple tools in this Visual Studio Code that you can also use for creating a GitHub repository and pushing your changes in your local repository, and from this local repository you can push it in a remote repository. So this is what I will be going through here. In my editor, I can do a command palette. I will open this, or I can also like open this using this command, command shift and P. So let's do that, command shift P, and I write git, and I will do a initialize a git repository. So what this will do is that this will initialize a git repository in my working directory, and pick workspace folder to initialize. So this is my workspace folder which I will be picking, and that's it. So now at this point you are seeing that one number popped up right here. So if I click this button, you will be seeing that there is some information here. So this source control git, where so these are the changes, and I can stage these two files, and once we stage that, we can push the change in our local repository. I mean, right now this is in local only in my my machine. So I can add these two files. Let's do that. I do that and I add this. And so at this point, these two are staged and ready to be committed to the branch. So let's create a good message. Just write added text.html part 1, and I can commit this using this button. So I click this. So now this has been staged. So now at this point I can do a push, and here this is showing one message is that your repository has no remotes configured to push to. So if I expand this message, so if I click there, Okay, so at this point, what we will be doing is that we will create a remote repository in GitHub. So if I open my GitHub profile, I have to create a new repository, which will be as my workstation says basic HTML elements. So I can add a small description that this repository contains code code about on HTML basics. And I don't have to initialize this with a repository, so I create the repository, and now this is showing some of the ways we can push our local repository to this remote repository. So what we will be doing is that we will be adding this, we will be using this link so that like or pushing an existing repository from the command line. So what we will be doing is that we will be opening the terminal with this, and I paste that, so it adds that remote repository, and at this point we will be able to push our changes. Let's try to do that. This is saying that the branch master has no upstream branch. Would you like to publish this branch? Okay. Okay, awesome, looks good. So now if I refresh this page, now I am able to see my changes here, and as well as the specific commit message that I put there, index.html here, and so this is what we had before. So one thing actually I'm seeing here which I want to update here is that every other item has been indented from its parent element, but this head and every other element actually should start with with a indentation here. So what I will be doing is that in the code, let's close out our terminal, and from this point to this point I indent those using tab, and I save that here, so that now in our branch manager this is this is complaining that this file has been changed, so we need to stage that first, and then we will want to add our commit message that indent fixed indentation, and also at the we can commit this using this command, and at the same time we can also commit this with our keyboard command and return, and this committed our change, and at this point we can push it to our master, and at this point if I refresh this page I will be able to see the change here, and at the same time if I go back and sorry, yep, so at this point you will be seeing that so this is the latest change with this fixed indentation, and if you go to the history of our repository you will see that there are two commits. The first commit was about the whole file, and in the second commit we changed that indentation, so that in this way like you also get some idea about actually how we work with Git and like different version controls there. So there will be a separate tutorial regarding that, but at this point, so that you have access to the code that we are writing and we are playing with, I created this branch and the link will be in the description. Please go to this link to clone this repository so that like you can play with the code and um, um, add some changes and that to learn your HTML actually. So cool. So at this point, in this video, as I said, that we will talk more about the block and inline elements, and as well as how we can create tables here. So one thing I would like to do is that I would like to create a new page here, and I give it a name such as like HTML part 2.html, and I start with our parent tag, which will have a head, and underneath that head we will have this title, which will have the title that we will be showing in the tab here there, so that we can specify something like basics of HTML part 2, and I can have the body. Underneath that body, we can have a small h2 tag, which will have, say for example, block elements, and underneath that we'll have another h2 tag with inline elements. Okay, cool. At this point, I think this looks pretty cool for me, and I can open it. So if I right click on this and I do a reveal in Finder, so this is our HTML file. I can open it in our Google Chrome browser. So then you will see that this rendered the HTML for us in our web page with our changes, such as these two h2 tags for the headers, and this also has the title that we specified in our code right here. Okay, so the point of the block elements and the inline element is that the block elements has its own space. I mean, it contains its own space, and every block element has its own line. On the other end, inline elements, as the name suggests, that this is inline actually, and it does not take more than the space this element actually needs. So if I in the previous video as well, we learned about headers, paragraph tags, divs. So these are the block elements. So like in HTML, you can. So what I'm trying to do is that I will write some comments with this sign. So this is how in HTML you can write comments. So the point of comment is that this you can add any like English language or like whatever makes more sense to you to describe a the what a programming language does, or such as like what a line does. Say for example, so this is an this is h2 tag, which is I can just like write a comment such as like, so this is a header level 2. So when the HTML will render these different elements in our web page. So this will always ignore these comments. So this is how you create different comments in here, such as we can do such as like so like in VS Code you can also insert a comment using command and / like that, and I can just say that body tag starts here, and at the same time when we finish the body tag we can add a comment for our understanding that body tag ends here, so that we know that okay, so everything we need to show in the web browser has to be underneath this this comment line and top of this comment. So the reason I was talking about this comment is that in the comment I can specify or like write anything, so such as like for block statement, block elements. So we can talk about h1, h2 to h6. Paragraph is a block tag, form is, div is a block tag, so and etc. So the point of all these like block elements or the block tags is that they take its own space. So such as like in our previous page, say for example, as we created this page, we created this header, and after that if we want to have a paragraph tag, so that will not take the same space line or the same line as the header tag. So they are block tag and they take their own space. On the other hand, when we were talking about this image or these links, where they were taking its own space and they were overlapping, so they were sharing the same space. So this is how they are different. So what we'll be doing is that I shrink this window a little bit and I open our new page and I try to write some code here. So these are the different block tags. Let's say I can start with some header. I already have a header, so let's do some paragraph tag. And as I have said in the last video that there is a good website for dummy content, so I just copy some of these comments. Let's say this part, and paste it here. And I format it. So this is our paragraph tag. Let's say this is another div we have, and underneath this div we can have I'm talking about different tags such as like section. These are different tags actually, so that we'll be talking about later. A section is a section can be like any like general tag which can have other tags in it, and this works as like specific div, but these are part of the HTML5 elements, so we'll be talking about more on that later. But for now I'm just putting some dummy content to show you different like block elements here. So this is one section, and I can have like article, which is another. So I can have an a tag here which will point to such as let's say http google.com, which will take us to the Google website. So these are the different block tags. So if I save this file and go back to our page to refresh, so you will see that underneath this block element, this h2, we have this p tag here, which took its own space, and in another div tag we have one section, and after that, like, so this is like another block element which took its own space, and after that we have like another article which is another block tag, which has this link here. On the other hand, for the inline elements, we have different in the inline elements we have different like inline elements such as that. So such as like I can have a span. So this is one inline element which you can use to group other elements, and as well as like group different inline elements. The way this can be demonstrated in a better way is that if I have a block element such as if I have a block element such as a p tag here, and underneath that if we copy some of this text here and I paste it, I forward this so that I have a block element here, and which has this it opens up the paragraph here, and we can specify the inline elements, such as like if we want to say for example if we want to like italicize this part, so like I is an inline element. Say for example this lorem is ipsum, we want to make it strong. So what I'm doing is that I cut this with Command and X, and I open the strong tag and I paste it here, so that this lorem is ipsum, or this part of text becomes bold. And let's do this for this part to make have an underline under this text. So if I cut this with Command X and I do a U tag with, and I paste it with Command V, I save that and I refresh this page. So you will be seeing that this has been italicized, and this this did not create a new line of itself, right? But this included the same line, and this was rendered into the same line, and this is how we need both the block elements and the inline elements. So the way when it gets like more vivid is in the sense that there are other button elements, such as like if I like underneath this p tag. So if I have different buttons such as like button, so I can have some like sign up. If I have, let's say, an input item with type of text, also let's do text area. So these are different inline elements which takes different arguments, such as like I can specify name, ID, how many columns this will take. So this is showing that this will have it 30 columns, or you can say the width will be 30 and the height will be 10 in this case. So if I save this and if I refresh this page here, so you'll be seeing that this button, right? So this button, it did not take a specific line for itself. Instead, it just appended where we left off here, right here. And at the same time, input. So this is another tag where we can input some data, such as like my input here. So, and this is the text area where this is the text area where I can write a blog, for example. So these are like different inline elements which we need both actually to create like useful websites. So these kinds of like input tags we use in order to create forms and text areas. So these are we use for when we will be using forms and all. So if we want to like if we want to make this have its own have their own space and show one after another, we can have a break tag here which puts a new line after each of those. So like after button we will have a new line, like after this thing we will have another new line, and let's have another new line here. So now if I save that and if I refresh this page, so at this point you will be seeing that the sign up button shows up after this, but even though the whole thing is a part of the p tag, so this is where we don't want this to happen, even though like this is totally totally works for us. But for sanity purposes, what we can do is that we remove this break tag, because once the p tag ends here, the new item will start from after that, right? So we don't need that break tag there anymore, but we need this button, and after this button we need a break tag in order to show this input tag after the button, and after this input tag we need this break tag so that the text area shows after the input right here. So if I save this page and I refresh it, so now at this point you will see that this is a p tag, and underneath this p tag we have this button, input, and text area. Yep. So yep. So yeah, at this point if you inspect the web page and try to look into the source file, so here is our source file. So you will be seeing that, so this is the p tag here, and which has all these different formattings that we made. And after this p tag we have this button, this break tag, and our text. So you will see that like once I hover over these specific items, this also highlights the specific tag for us. So in this way you can inspect that really what is going on in your web page. If you are having any issue or like know that okay, so this is how this should be working, but for some reason you are not seeing the expected output in your web browser, you can also like do some like inspecting on your source files. So yeah, this is all about the block elements and inline elements. In the next video, I will be talking more about how you can create HTML tables and render them in the web page, and how you can format the cells and columns in the table. But up until now, I have talked about how you can create the block elements and inline elements in HTML. What I will be doing is that I will be putting out this code in the GitHub repository so that you can clone the repository and play with the code. But stay tuned for the next video. Hope to see you there. Thanks for watching this video. Have a good one. Thanks, guys. Bye.